Thanks for catching that. So you guys can see this, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So Osteichthyes. So the bony fish. That's an eye. Sorry. Sure it's, hold on. Okay. Um, the actually, I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to let you copy this. Easier. Just copy this. Um, the taxonomy is this. So basically, again, page 123. So Actinopteryngii. And by the way, I'm not going to be giving you any questions with like, what does this word mean on taxonomy? Okay, but these two names, Actinopteryngii, means ray finned. It just means that in the fins of the fish, they have rays instead of bones. And then we have Chondrostii, which include the bikers and the sturgeons. Reedfish, paddlefish, and I'll show you pictures of these. That's what that the PowerPoint is. And then we have Neopteryngii, which will be the modern. So the Chondrostii are the older in terms of evolution, and then the newer ones, you can tell by the word neo, are the more advanced modern ones. Gars, bowfin, and then teleosts. Most of the, like if you think of a fish, most of the fish will be a teleost. So the two groups, Actinopteryngii and Sarcopteryngii. The Sarcopteryngii, so those are ray fin. These have bony fins. So they have in their fins they have they have bones, bony fins, and what the reason that's important is those bones are homologous to the bones in our arms and in our legs. So you can see the bone that would be, oh, that would evolve into the humerus or the femur. So that's these fish were the ones that for a while they thought, oh, that's the fish that grew, evolved legs and crawled out of the ocean. So we're going to start, but all of them are Osteichthyes. Okay. So did everybody copy this or get a screenshot? Yes, yes.
I did.
Okay, I'm assuming everybody did. Okay, so on the chondrichthyes, I mentioned there were 6 things that categorize the chondrichthyes. For Osteichthyes, there are 4. Okay, so the first one is lungs. Okay, so obviously it's not lungs like we have lungs. These are lungs as a swim bladder. And last time I went over what a swim bladder is. I'll get more into that. Okay. I'm going to give you the list of the 4, and then I'll go back and explain. Okay. So number 2 is the obvious. They have bones. Okay. Number 3, bony scales. And then I'm writing on my left side. Hold on. And then the last one, number 4, is it just means they have ray in their fins, but the word that is used in biology is lepidotrichia or lepidotrichia. Lepidotrichia. Okay, it just means ray finned. So the Actinopteryngii. Okay. So the first one, the lungs, again, a swim bladder. And I explained last time that if you have a fish, let me draw a fish like that. Okay, you see eye, mouth. That for them to move up and down the water column, they have a bladder, which is just a container, that they fill with air. And by inflating it, they go up. By deflating it, they sink. Okay, and they can stay a certain depth, or go up and down. So fish that are surface fish will have a bigger swim bladder. Fish that are bottom fish have a little or no swim bladder. Okay, and then remember we talked about sharks not using that and having the liver that is just full of oil, and the oil is what floats. Okay, but this swim bladder is different. So now going back to Osteichthyes, is different, and it starts as just here's the esophagus. Okay, and then you have, let's say you have the guts of the fish, the stomach and the intestines and all that. Okay, and if you look at primitive fish, in between all the way to modern, you see how the different stages of the swim bladder happened. So first started just a little pocket of air from the gut that they would fill up with air and then empty it when they wanted to swim. I mean to sink. This is still present in some fish. Okay, and this little connection is called the pneumatic duct. And you still see this in the old, like in the bikers and the lungfish. Okay? When you see the development of this, okay, so imagine you have this fish, right? So let me draw the fish again. Okay, eye, mouth. So imagine that here's the gut, and then you have the airbag here. Do you guys see a problem with this? Having the airbag lower on the body? What happens if this is filled with air? What happens to the fish?
It'll flip it upside down.
Yep.
Right. So this fish, if this is full of air, this fish is going to turn and flip. So this swim bladder has to be, like if that's the midline, has to be above, or as dorsal as it can. Okay? So these fish, this pneumatic duct, you start seeing gradually moving. I'm just drawing it out, moving up like that, and then up like that. Basically moving. Let me draw again. If this is the esophagus and the stomach, that it would start to go dorsal to the stomach, so the fish doesn't flip. And then you start seeing that instead of being, so if you were looking from the front, if you were looking like anteriorly, you'd have something like this is the stomach, and then you have the tube coming out and going like that, right? Be that. Okay. So dorsal. Okay. And then over, evolution, more and more fish, you start seeing that there will be two. So instead of just one from this side, you start seeing, I'm going to draw just from the front now. You're seeing, like here's the gut. You start seeing two swim bladders like that. And then these eventually move dorsally. So then you'd have kind of like that. Okay, this is like that. But you can see that throughout evolution, what these are going to become the lungs. Okay? That they'll be, dorsal to the gut, and then there'll be two, and then this connection is going to change. Okay? But in fish, the fish that have lungs are not this type of lungs. It's basically something like this, and then they just have capillaries in here that can exchange air. So something like this, or fish like that, it just swallows air. Air goes into this swim bladder, and then the capillaries here, and they come, and go, and they get oxygen, and then the fish just burps the air, it swallows again. If you've gone to fish stores and you've seen those the betta that they keep them in little cups, they have a swim bladder. They just swallow air. That's why you don't need to have an air pump putting oxygen in the water, because they just go up to the surface and just swallow it. So this is the swim bladder is common in fish. The connections are not the same. Okay. So if you have open up that PowerPoint, the one that says swim bladder, that you can follow what I'm going to try to draw now. So that the first slide has just, does everybody have it? Or, I mean, I can share it if you want, if you don't have it. Go into slide number 3 where he shows the fish. Hold on, I'm going to share and then just come back. Share. So here you see that there's the swim bladder, and again it's above the middle line of the fish, and then you have the pneumatic duct that connects the gut to that swim bladder. You can see that this swim, at least this one, has like a little constriction area here, and that's there. It's not just the way it was drawn. That's there for a reason, because in fish, that pneumatic duct, in some fish I should say, that pneumatic duct is lost, and then the gases enter the swim bladder through another way, basically from the circulatory system, and then the swim bladder has different anatomical features in it to help move the air in and out, and let the fish go up and down. So the next picture, like that. Okay, so this is a swim bladder that is not attached to the gut. Okay, so 2 words. Let me see if I can type them here. Oops. Hold on. It won't let me type it. Hold on. I'm going to type them here so you have the words. Okay, so fish that have the pneumatic duct connection I called physostomas. So have the duct, the pneumatic duct. So basically these just swallow air goes into the swim bladder, and then they burp the air out and go up and get some more when they need it. Okay, the ones that lost the connection, lost the pneumatic duct, okay, are called physosclistus. Okay, so no duct. Okay, so these have to have some other way to get the air into that in that swim bladder. Okay, and that way is through a capillary that sits in this one side of the gas bladder called the gas gland. Okay, this capillary has a name, but this is a name that is for any capillary bed. It's called rete mirabile. So if you think of a part of the body that has a big capillary bed, you can say that is a rete mirabile or mirabile. Okay, it's not just for fish. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Hope everybody got those words. Let me go back to the slide. Okay. So here's the gas bladder. Okay. The gas gland, and here these capillaries are the rete. Okay. So the circulatory system of the fish, goes in, goes out, and in that particular area, gas can be moved from the circulatory system into the gas gland and then into the gas bladder. Okay. Now there's just two different ways that then the air can move out of the gas bladder. Okay. And I'll go in more detail on how it can move in, because it's moving in. How do you move oxygen against the concentration gradient? I mean, you can think that this gas bladder is going to be full of oxygen, and the circulatory system doesn't just move it in there. Okay, but so that's on one end. This is where it goes in. So that's common in all fish, in all the all that they are Phycoclistus. On the opposite end, this particular drawing has an ovale. Okay, this is to let the air out. Okay, most fish that have this type of gas bladder have an ovale. Okay. So in the ovale, there's the little constrictor muscles. Okay, and inside the ovale, there's another capillary. Okay, so by opening or relaxing the constrictor muscles, air can go from the gas bladder to that little ovale and then back into circulation. Okay. So think about it, like if the fish wants to go up in the water column, if you're a scuba diver, you know that when you go up, if you go up too fast, you can get the bends. So you have to stop, decompress at different depths. So a fish would actually have to get, as the fish goes up, the air will start to expand. So the fish has to let air out of the gas bladder into the ovale, and then to get back into the circulation, and then out through the gills. Because if it doesn't, then the gas bladder will just expand and the fish dies. If you've gone deep sea fishing and you catch a fish, and then you're bringing it up. So we're bringing that fish up really, really fast. The fish doesn't, fish is caught, doesn't have time to get rid of the gas. And often when the fish comes up, the gas bladder is like sticking out of its mouth. So usually you have to pop it, because the fish can die. I don't know if you ever seen that, but it's a sad looking fish when they have this thing coming out of the mouth. Okay, so that's one way. The other way is to have a diaphragm. So imagine that instead of having, so you still have the gas gland, and this part right here is the same, right? And then here is closed. Actually, let me see if I can draw this. So basically there's a muscle in between. Hold on. Stop. Share. You can see that, right? The notepad. Okay. So imagine this is the gas gland. Okay. Here you have the rete with the capillary. Okay. So air goes into the gas bladder that way. Okay. So this is called diaphragm. The other one was the ovale. And basically, it's just think of a diaphragm in that we have to help us breathe. It's a muscle across the chest. So there'll be a muscle here. Okay? And this muscle can constrict. So this would become something like that, right? Like can constrict and basically control the flow of air from one side to the other. Okay. And then on this side, there's going to be another capillary that will let the air out. again, out back to the circulation, and then circulation, it goes to the gills where it can be let out, okay? So what these fish do is they constrict this muscle, something like that, and by opening it and constricting, they can control how much air is moved from the swim bladder to this side and out. So it's just a different way of doing the exact same thing. Again, these are the ones that can't don't have the pneumatic duct, so they have to get the air from the circulation. The other ones just swallow it. Oops. There you go. Okay, so these are the last two slides on the PowerPoint that says gas bladder. So the question is, how can this gas gland, so the one on the left side that all fish have, how can it move oxygen against the concentration gradient? Because it's more concentrated inside the swim bladder than it is in the blood. And you know, if you think of a capillary, they work by difference in concentration gradients. So here's, you know, you're moving it against the concentration gradient. How does it work? And the way it does that is by taking advantage of two effects. One is called the Bohr effect. Here, B-O-H-R. Again, this is not just found in fish. You know, this happens in our system, different parts. It's physics. Okay, so imagine you have a graph like this, where you have oxygen pressure that increases as you go to the right on the x axis, and then on the y you have the amount of hemoglobin that's saturated. So imagine, you know, the oxygen is carried in the red blood cells. They can carry 4 units of hemoglobin. One cell can carry 4. Okay, and you have the graph showing the normal. So the oxygen the red blood cells start to get saturated, higher, and then they reach a level where they are saturated. Okay, so what the Bohr effect does, okay, is that it lowers the pH. Okay, and that's related to, so lowering the pH makes it more acidic. That has to do with carbon dioxide. You know, carbon dioxide and water can break down, form carbonic acid. You know, and then the acid lowers the pH. So by lowering the pH, it leads to the Bohr effect, and also the next one, which is the root effect. And what it does is shifts this normal curve to the right, which is the blue line right there. Okay, and what it does is lowers. This is in the Bohr effect. Lowers the affinity of hemoglobin to the oxygen. So basically, the hemoglobin does not want to hold on to the oxygen as the pH lowers. Gets more acidic. Okay. So by creating an acidic environment right at the gas gland, the oxygen in the blood of the fish doesn't want to stay in the hemoglobin, so it wants to be released. You know, you see the difference here. So when it's released, it can be moved easily to the other side, to the gas bladder. The other effect is the root effect. Okay? So again, the same graph, oxygen pressure, hemoglobin saturation. Okay? So here, there's the normal curve, the dark black, and what again, lowering the pH, creating an acidic environment, what the root effect is lowers the maximum number of oxygen molecules the hemoglobin can hold on to. So instead of holding on to 4, what the root effect does is, oh, now hemoglobin can only hold 2. So a combination of the root effect saying, oh, instead of 4, you can only hold 2, and then the Bohr effect saying, oh, you really don't want to hold on to any, causes the hemoglobin to release the oxygen, or it helps the hemoglobin to release oxygen, and then that oxygen is moved to the other side of inside the gas bladder. So that's the Bohr effect and the root effect, and you're going to hear it in in other systems. It's not just just a fish. Okay. All right. So that was number 1. So that was the lungs as a swim bladder. The number 2 is bones. So again, the bony fish, they have bones. In some of them, they lost the bones, but it's a secondary adaptation. Things like sturgeons. Sturgeons are the fish that where caviar comes from. Sturgeons, paddlefish, lungfish. They lost the bone, but they have bones. So they don't have bones in their body, but they have bones in their scales. They still have them somewhere. Let me see. And then the scales. So now I have to draw scales. So let me stop. So that's it for this PowerPoint. Okay. So let me draw. Go back to this. So again, some of it is from page 126. Okay, but not a lot. So we're talking about the bony scales. Okay, so fish have bones. That's it. They have bones, but others don't have bones or have bony scales. Oops, bony scales. Okay. So the ancient or the most primitive, you think, scales are called cosmoid. And the cosmoid had 4 layers of, oops, sorry. There we go. 4 layers, okay? So imagine that this is the scale, okay? Here's the fish is here, okay? That's the outside, okay? So the first layer on going out in, okay, is enamel, just like the enamel in our teeth. Okay? Then they have this layer of where the name comes from, cosmin, which is like a dentine. Okay? And then they have the type of bone. So then the 2 layers here are bone. So the first one will be a spongy bone. And then the bottom one will be a dense bone. And these are found in remember we talked about, I mentioned the cross-subpterygian, the fish that have the bony fins. That's the kind of scales that they have. In present fish, or living fish, the lungfish, again, more primitive fish, and then a fish that we'll talk about that's considered a living fossil. It's called a coelacanth. Okay. Again, these fish have the bones in their fins that look like the bones. I mean, homologous to the bones in our bodies. That's cosmoid. The next one is called gasmoid, or ganoid, excuse me, ganoid. That's scales, okay, and it's very similar to this one. Okay, so you have a layer of enamel. Okay, but instead of cosmine, you have ganoine. Okay, so right there. Then you have the cosmine. and then you have the bone. So this is derived from that. And this is just, guanine, you think of guanine, so just the different compound that's there. And these type of scales, okay, are diamond-like shape, so that they would look something like this, okay. So that one, then there'll be another one here, another one there, things like that, okay. And they have how do you say it, like a socket, so that they would have like a point where they would join into the body, and then this part is like, that's the attachment, this is not. They're really shiny, solid. Again, if that's the ancient, this will be the next one. Fish like gars, if you ever seen gar, they're very shiny. Gars, sturgeons, bikers. I'll show you pictures of all these fish. Reed fish. And you can see this apart because it just looks like they're covered with little diamonds. Okay. Now so that's the most prominent, the primitive. The modern fish, or the most common fish you can think of, okay, are going to have the type of scale called elasmoid. Okay. Another name that you might see is leptoid. Okay. I'm giving you this one just so that if you see it in the book, you recognize what it is. Okay. Elasmoid is the most common one. So these are thinner, more translucent. They don't have the no enamel or dentine. Okay, most common type of scales. Okay, now these, when they grow, they add concentric layers, just like the layers on a tree trunk. So you could age the fish by counting layers. And the way that they overlap, it's almost like if you see tiles on the roof. So it'll be like, here's one, here's the other. I mean, you've seen scales on a fish like that. Okay. There's two subdivisions. Okay. And by the way, when we're dissecting the fish in lab, you'll really see this really easily. Okay. So one is called cycloid, and the other one's ctenoid. Okay. And that has to do with this edge right here. So that the edge of the actual scale, how is it? Okay. If you see, so let me draw one. Okay. So here's a scale. Okay, that's this part that you see, and then this is the part that you don't see. This is the part that's attached to the body. Okay. And I said that they have concentric layers, so this will be the different layers. Sorry. So you can count the age of the fish. Okay. So if the outer edge right here is smooth, okay, it's cycloid. Okay. If the outer edge is like a little like think of the combs of a tooth, like that. Okay. So it's still going to have the layers for the age, and this is still going to be like that, but this is not going to be smooth. Those are the ctenoid. Okay. A way to remember this is, remember the ctenophores? Those of you that had invertebrate biology, the comb jellies, the cnidarians, the ctenophore we'll call it comb jellies. Well, ctenoid, this looks like the comb.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that helps you remember that. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that one fish will have only one, not the other. Fish are complicated. Some will have only one type. For example, perch will have only ctenoid. Okay. Trout minnows will have only cycloid. Okay? But there are others that will have will have both, and it's usually remember we talked about having. Let me draw my fish. They have a let's see here. They have a lateral line. Usually is one type. Usually that's what separates it. You know that like there's one type above it, and then there's another type below it. Okay, usually that's the separate the place where they'll separate it. Okay, some fish don't have scales. Catfish don't have scales. There's a fish called the sunfish. The genus is Mola, basically Mola mola. It looks like a giant blob. They don't have scales. Okay. Some the scales are so small, like think of like an eel, the microscopic that you have to look under the microscope to be able to see these things. You know, sometimes they have scales, but they don't cover the whole body. When we dissect the stingray or a skate, you see that you see that here. Okay, so let's imagine a stingray like this, and the tail, the eyes, right, the gills. That this is called the wings. That they'll have scales like on this area, right here, but nothing in here. So I mean, it's not uniform throughout the fish world. It's not that they'll have only one type of scale. They'll have a mixture of these. You know, one of them, one part of the body, the other one on the other part of the body. Again, catfish tend to have no scales. Some of them have a scale that modified into like an armor. Okay, but on these type of scales, because of the concentric rings, you can age them. So let's hold up. So if you have a scale like that, okay, and you know you have rings like this, okay, so you could tell the age of the fish, okay. And in terms of ecology, if you were studying the like the environment and the diet and how the fish lived, you can tell the space. Imagine that year, no, that was first year, so from 1 to 2, right? And then here, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So you could tell the fish grew more on the second year than it did on the first or the third. And that could be, okay, maybe there was more food. Maybe the environment was more susceptible for the fish to eat and grow. So you could tell a lot from just getting a scale. Okay, so that's the end of scales. The last part is the ray-finned or Lepidotrichia. Okay, and that's on page 125. Okay, so let me write the fancy word, Lepidotrichia. Okay, so this has to do with the pelvic and pectoral girdles, how the fins are attached to the body. If it's by fins or if there's some bony parts there. Again, this is to separate the fish that will have the bones that are the ancestors of the bones in our legs. Okay, so before I start getting into the detail, draw 4 of these. So this is the body of the fish. Okay, then there's going to be a bone like this. Okay, this is the bone that attaches the fin to the body itself. Okay, it's called the scapulocoracoid. Scapulocoracoid. Okay, and then there's going to be a fin. What happens inside the fin is going to change. Okay? So get a page, draw 4 of these, and then I'll start again. And if you have color pencils, or sorry I didn't give you a warning on this, but if you have a pen and pencil, something that you can just different colors, it will help you. Okay. So this is the more primitive one. Okay. This will be the one in Chondrostii, which are the bikers, and example sturgeons. And here these called basals are attached. These bones are attached directly to the scapulocoracoid. Okay, so you're going to draw 5 basal bones here. Okay, so these are basals, bones. Okay. Then from that, you're going to have radials. So you can have another bones like that. Those are radials. And then you just have what they call fin rays, just fins. Fin rays. If you next time you have a whole fish in your hand, you grab the fins, and if you touch feel the inside of the fin, you can feel the rays. These will be really, really soft, and then you'll feel some that are harder, like tougher. So you're in these areas. Okay. So here the pectoral and the pelvic fins are the connection with the scapulocoracoid is directly to the basals. Now, so that's the more primitive ones. The next one, okay, are the neopteryngii. These are called teleosts, and you might not be familiar with this. Most of the fish that you can think of are teleosts. Okay, if you see a fish down the street, say that's a teleost, and you probably be right. Okay, most common fish. Okay? And here it's very similar to that. Okay, but you're losing the basals. So the radials are connected to the scapulocoracoid. Okay, so draw exactly the same. Okay, I'm going to erase it, so you're going to hate me, but you would just take the basals out. Okay, and get them out, and just the radials attached. So when if you buy bass or something to eat, and you feel what so imagine like that's the fish, right? Oops, sorry, that's the fish, and then you have the fins here. That's the eye, mouth. If you were feeling this, you would just feel like there's a tougher ones, which would be the radials, and then there's the little fin ones that are really soft. So that's the next step in the evolution of these. Tell me when you're ready. I'll go to number 3.
I'm ready.
Ready? Everybody ready?
Yep.
Okay, so number 3 now. I'm going to move this up a little. It gets a little bit more complicated. Okay, so you have the body, scapulocoracoid. Okay, so these are found in the Sarcopteryngii. Sorry, big names. Remember, there was Actinopteryngii and then Sarcopteryngii. these are the fish that are going to have the bones in their fins. Okay, so lungfish. It's a kind of a nerdy story. I had one time one of those frames for the license plates that said Sarcopteryngii. I just thought, haha, the fish evolved into a car. It really didn't work because only the biologists would get it, and people would stop me and ask me what that was. And I was like, yeah, it didn't go well. Anyway, so here, okay, we're going back to having the basals connected to the scapulocoracoid, okay, but instead of having a like here, if you can see, instead of having not here, the one before, where you have the five basals separate there, okay, what we have here is we have a series of bones. So you have bones like this going out like that. So those are the basals. I'm going to write right here. Okay. And then from here, you think that they would have just arrays, but they don't. The radials show up again, and then you have again little series of radials like this on both sides. I'm drawing 3 just for space, okay? Like, and on the front here, okay? So those are the radials. Okay. Then from that, then you have the fins. Okay. Now the last one is what we find in what we call tetrapodomorphs. So big name, tetra as in 4, podo as in feet, and then morph as in shape. So basically the animals that have 4 appendages, like 4 legs, okay? And what we see is that there's a modification of this into something that's a little different, okay? So the way that this changes is we lose, so if this is ventral and that's dorsal, okay, we're going to lose all the radials on the, I'm sorry, all the ones on the dorsal sides. So get rid of all the dorsal ones. I know you hate me because I'm erasing. So you just have the basals here. Okay. The radials that were like small little bones now are just one connection like that, just one. Okay. But on the end, you're going to have one on the dorsal. Kind of like think of like you have your hand and then you have the thumb opposing, so you have one on the end. Okay. And then again, don't think of this being 5 fingers because the number 5 as in fingers wasn't always what was there. Okay. So that's the last one. So that's the 4th modification that we see in these ray fins. Okay. And that's basically the 4 characteristics of these bony fish. I know that these are the main ideas. Okay. Now the way that they let me get my next one. The way that they look is very, very different. And I'm going to show you now the next PowerPoint that you have, the one with just fish, just pictures of fish. So I'm going to go through them and give you, let me stop sharing. Pictures. Hold on, let me close. So many things opened here. Okay, that one. Don't get overwhelmed with all the pictures. Some are just pictures. I just want to show you what they are. Okay. Share. That's okay. You should see the PowerPoint with fish, right? This fish ID.
Yes.
Hi, thanks. Okay, so the ones that I put on the PowerPoint, I mean on Blackboard for you guys to see, is it's the same with this, but I have some pictures here that are just cool pictures, and I didn't put them on yours because I don't want you to get overwhelmed. Like, you know, because someone's always trying to ask me, oh, how do I study for this? I'm not gonna, you know, ask you what is this picture. That's why I didn't put all of them there. Okay, so going through, oops, here you go. Remember I talked about Osteichthyes, bikers, and reedfish having those ganoid scales. So here you have, just in terms, you know, we're in the Silurian, Devonian, when there's fish all over the place. Okay, I mean, every fish group that existed or it still exists was alive at that time. So you had strachoderms, placoderms, and then you had these modern fish, and you had these giant fish that, you know, don't exist anymore. Okay? So again, don't go swimming in the Devonian. No, like Nigel. Okay, so right here you have a biker and a reed fish, you know, and you can tell that the scales look, like I said, look like little diamonds all lined up together. These are, yeah, more in terms of evolution and in terms of anatomy, they are more primitive. Or, you know, they still have the. We talked about the gas bladder having two connections or two openings from the gut. These have that. Okay, and so and they're still ventral to the esophagus. So it hasn't moved to the dorsal. There you go. Okay, the sturgeons. So here, this is a big order. It's called Acip anseriformes, and they lost the most of the scales, but they have these dermal bones, these big scales along the side, and it's actually so that the head and the bones are cartilage, but it's almost like a way of identifying them by how many of these scales that they have. Look, you can see the tail is, you know, these fish are heterocircle. So again, kind of thinking of like more ancient. You know, this is where the caviar comes from. Okay, just big fish. They're in the northern hemisphere. These are paddlefish. The name comes, you can't see, but the nose, or not the nose, the rostrum here, it looks, this is sideways. If you're looking from the top, it looks like a big paddle. Okay? And it's full of that ampullae of Lorenzini, those little sensory organs. It's all over them. Two species, one from China, from the Yangtze River, which believed to be extinct, and then the one from the Mississippi Basin. Okay? And you can see how big they can get. Okay? One from China that they think they're extinct is because they China built this big dam right in the area where this paddlefish lived, so they haven't seen any records of them. They think it just went extinct. Here's a, oops, come on. There you go. Neopteryngii. Okay, so these are the ones that have the different fins. Okay, this is just an example of this fish that it's extinct, but it was the biggest fish ever. If you watch one of the Nigel films, uh, they show a school of these fish swimming by, and Nigel goes and swims with them and pokes them. They were really diverse. I mean, the Neopteryngii are very diverse. They became the dominant group. They have, when you look at the tail, you don't see the heterocircle or the reverse heterocircle. This is called homocircle because it's the same. So the dorsal and the ventral look alike. And this is the most common fish. The swim bladder in these type of fish is present, but again, depending on where the fish lives. So let me go through these. I don't know if you've seen gars. So again, this is the Osteichthyes, very abundant at one time. There are only two groups, or two orders. That's the bowfin and that's the gars. Gars are mean little fish, the predators. They have long snouts. In the U.S., especially the Southeast, Central America, in fresh water, and they just look mean, like the teeth are always there, showing. This one's called the bowfin. This is only found in North America, and more exactly like the Southeast. So like Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, all those. They eat anything, and the name comes from having that long fin on the dorsal side. These fish have teeth, and they will bite you. Okay, I can tell you a story, and they breathe air, so they have the type of air bladder, or lungfish or lung that they can swallow air and survive. When I was a student, and this was at the University of Central Florida, I was getting my master's. The professor I was working with, is a sea turtle guy, but he had tanks of fish. And one day we were out catching something, and we caught one of these bowfins, and we brought him to school. We had him in a fish tank, because it's a rare fish. We can show it to all the students. This thing, so imagine like a weekend, this thing jumped out of the tank onto the, was on the floor, didn't like splash, was still alive, and it survived until Monday. Because when we came on Monday, we could not find this fish in the tank, and we were looking all over the floor, and then we found him. It was just crawling around, and we're like, wow, this thing couldn't kill it, and it's mean. You can't just grab him. It would snap at you. Okay. Oh, hold on, someone just typed something in the chat, and I can't get to it. Hold on.
Oh, I was just saying, oh Lord.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, this thing, and it was one of those things like you can't kill it. So we kind of felt bad for it, so we just released it back without the professor know, because like the fix. If it survived one weekend on the floor, crawling around in a lab, it doesn't deserve to live in a fish, in a bowl. So we released it.
Yeah, and it would not be a good idea to keep it in the lab, right? I mean, if it can do that.
Yeah, it would just like jump out again, and and then who knows where it would end up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you ever see one of these, and they can live in murky water, again, they can just come up and grab oxygen. But they're mean. They have a lot of teeth. Okay.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Okay, so then we go to teleos. So this is the biggest infraclass. The higher, we call like higher bony fish. Most of the fish you think of will be teleos. Okay, and they go back to the Hawk's genes. You see duplication again here. These have, instead of having 4 sets, they have 7 sets. So it duplicated into 8, but only 7 are functioning. Okay, and many shapes, many different forms and habitats. I'm not going to go into the taxonomy, I'm just going to go into the general group. Okay, so one of them is called, the first one is called osteoglossomorph. So bony, osteoglosso, tongue, morph, shape. So they have a bony tongue. Okay, this is a rapaya or arowana from the Amazon. You see how big they can get. Okay. There is, if you're in San Diego, there's a Chinese restaurant. Oh, sorry, in PB. That they had a tank with one of these, and the poor thing was the size, or when I saw it last time, is the size of the tank. So basically, you can't, like, it just turns around, and then you can't swim. It just turns around again. It's like, let the fish, let it go into a pond or somewhere else. It was right. If you're familiar with the area, there's a Vaughn's little shopping center. It's be like on the opposite side of the Vaughn's. Like in a corner. It's I think the only Chinese place there. Elopomorpha. Okay. This is where the tarpon and bonefish are. Okay, so these are big fish. Some species are catadromous. That's the ones that can go from freshwater to seawater to breed. You write that. I wrote it before, but just in case. So they're in this group, there are species that are catadromous. So from fresh to sea, like eels. Like eels migrate to the Sargassum Seal. Okay? Sargassum Sea. Excuse me. And the tarpons, that's the tarpon. It looks small, but that's the size. You see fishermen just looking for these because when they're swimming along the coast, it's called rolling, like tarpon are rolling, because they come up right to the surface, and you see just the fin, the dorsal fin right here, and then you see that long fin. And when you see that, oh, there go the tarpon. So the fishermen just run up and down the coast trying to catch these. I don't know if any of you are fishermen, but tarpon. Okay, bonefish. These are again the same group, the Lopomorphus, and they're really good fishing and eating type of fish. By the way, you see this picture? Someone told me when you catch a fish and you're taking a picture, see how he's holding the fish out towards the camera? So it's like, so he looks bigger, basically. If you catch a fish, don't take a picture with the fish next to your body because it will look smaller. If you stretch your arms out and put it close to the camera like this, fish looks really big, and it might, even if it's not. So that's a trick. I started paying attention. I'm like, yeah, they're showing that now. The guys are like, okay. All right. Osteichthyes. This is the most abundant type of commercial fish. Okay. They have that type of swim bladder that's divided into the two chambers, with the diaphragm. Okay. Most of these are freshwater. They kind of look like they have an underbite, but you can, but not all is freshwater. But you think of like herring, shad, anchovy. Most of the fish that are food fish are these. The Clupeiformes. These are mostly plankton eating. They're like the silvery schooling fish. Now, one thing to notice is they don't have the lateral line. They don't have that big line here. Let me go back. You can see on the tarpon, you see it right there. Bonefish, I don't know because there's so many lines there, but it will be right in this area. Okay, but the Clupeiformes don't have that. Okay, and again, sardines, that kind of silvery type of fish. Okay, one of the things that they have. Do I have more pictures? No. One of the things that the Clupeiformes have is called the Weberian apparatus, and it's a special adaptation of the bones. that lets these fish transmit sound really well, so that the sound that's in the water goes into their hearing really, really well. Okay, I'm going to draw this because so you have it, but it's on page figure 6.10. 6.10. But let me put the camera on. Ashley, stop recording.